Welcome to FB Podcast, where we delve into football stories not only on the pitch, but also the harsh, dark corners behind. Today, we will not talk about a beautiful move or a historic goal, but a talent who was once expected to shake the world, but is now facing the abyss of his career. Guys, imagine a player just scored in the European Cup final, just received a thunderous applause at Stamford Bridge, but just a few days later, he had to say goodbye on social media, all ending with a $5 million fine and a one-way ticket back to Manchester United. Everything seemed to be a happy ending for the relationship between Jadon Sancho and Chelsea, but then everything was just temporary. Is this the tragic fate of a football talent or a valuable lesson about the harshness of money and irreconcilable personal conflicts? Join us in finding the answer to the ironic story called Jadon Sancho's miserable fate. Dear friends, Jadon Sancho's journey at Chelsea in the 2024-2025 season is truly an emotional film, starting as a search for salvation after he was left out of the limelight at Manchester United. He arrived at Stamford Bridge with many expectations, efforts, and a bit of hurt after the turmoil at Old Trafford. Chelsea welcomed him with open arms, and in just a short time, they seem to have found something special in this guy. And indeed, that season, Sancho clearly proved his worth. He played 42 matches in all competitions, contributing 5 goals and 10 assists. These are not just simple statistics, but they have greatly contributed to Chelsea's journey to qualify for the Champions League and more specifically to win the UEFA Conference League. Recalling that memorable final, it was Sancho who scored the third goal, ending all hopes of Real Betis's resistance, bringing the first title to Chelsea under the new coach Enzo Maresca. That contribution was not forgotten. Right after the championship night, Maresca did not hesitate to praise his student. He affirmed, "If we finished the season in 4th place, it was thanks to Jadon. If we won tonight, it was also thanks to Jadon." Those words sound touching, don't they? But then, football is not only about emotions, but also about cold number. Right after those words of gratitude, Chelsea's board saw another number: Sancho's $300,000 a week salary. According to sources from ESPN and The Athletic, in the initial agreement between the two clubs, Chelsea did not have to pay a loan fee for Sancho, but included a clause that if they finished 14th or higher in the Premier League, they would have to buy the player outright for $25 million. Chelsea finished 4th. The clause was officially activated, but there was an important detail that few people noticed: that the buyout still required an agreement between the club and the player on personal terms. And this is when everything fell apart. Chelsea asked Jadon Sancho to take a deep cut in his current salary to fit the wage structure at Stamford Bridge. The club has spent a lot of money on young talent from all over, and a player like Sancho, who is not in their long-term investment priority group, without a pay cut. And my friend Sancho has flatly refused to take a pay cut. Instead of signing a permanent deal, Chelsea have chosen to pay Manchester United the $5 million fine stipulated in the contract. Surprisingly, there was no hostility in the refusal, no news of internal conflict, no excessive actions on either side. On the contrary, Sancho even posted a sincere thank you on social media, saying that he was grateful for his experience at Chelsea and sending love to everyone who made him feel at home. It is clear that this is a civilized but also commercial farewell. Chelsea did not sign Sancho because he is bad, but simply because they did not believe he was worth the long-term investment in a system that is already too complicated financially and personnel-wise. So after less than a year, the English midfielder once again fell into the familiar cycle, being rejected, being pushed away, and being sent back. And it was from this choice that Sancho's story began to enter a period of ambiguity. He was not cheap enough to be kept, but not expensive enough to be a priority. After being rejected by Chelsea, Jadon Sancho was forced to return to Manchester United, where he was once considered the brightest gem of English football. But my friends, returning to Old Trafford this time does not mean reunion or rebirth, but simply following the correct procedure in the transfer dossier. Because if at Chelsea Sancho was rejected due to cost issues at Man United, he is the one no one is waiting for. It all started with an irreparable rift with coach Erik ten Hag in September 2023. Sancho publicly wrote on social media that he was treated unfairly and accused the Dutch coach of being a liar. Immediately after that, Man United took action. He was removed from the first team, banned from team activities, and forced to train separately. This was no longer just a personal conflict, but a sign that the internal relationship between Sancho and the Red Devils had completely broken down. Although Sancho was later sent to Dortmund on loan to save his form, and and then continued to be given the opportunity at Chelsea at Old Trafford, no one believed in the player's ability to revive. Even when there was a change on the coaching bench with Erik leaving and Ruben Amorim rumored to be taking over, sources close to Manchester United still said that the Portuguese coach had no intention of keeping him in his plan. This is understandable. Guys, Ruben Amorim prioritizes discipline, tightly controlling not only tactics but also playing attitude. In the 3-4-2-1 formation he used at Sporting, the attacking midfielders require players to be active both with and without the ball, something Sancho has often been criticized for lacking in intensity. Even in terms of form, his first 2 seasons at Manchester United in 2021-2023 have not been convincing enough. From an $85 million deal in the summer of 2021, Sancho has scored just 12 goals and had 6 assists in his first 2 seasons, a very modest performance for a player bought to become a mainstay of the attack. With no place in the squad, Man United now see Sancho as a commodity to be liquidated with an expected selling price of around 30 million. Financially, if Sancho is sold, the Old Trafford team can solve 2 problems at once: reduce the burden of wages and create space for new players. So even though Sancho is on his way back to Manchester, he and his old team understand that this is just a temporary stay. However, do you agree with me? No matter how miserable his fate is, Jadon Sancho is still valuable. That is undeniable. He used to be one of the best attacking players in the Bundesliga, creating 114 goal contributions in 137 matches for Borussia Dortmund. Even last season at Chelsea, he still left his mark with 5 goals, 10 assists, and especially an important counter-attack in the UEFA Conference League final. For mid-level clubs or teams that need to increase their squad depth, Sancho is still an attractive commodity if they can put aside non-professional issues. So who will be the one to welcome him again? Do you want to try to predict? The media has listed quite a few potential destinations. The first and perhaps most likely is Borussia Dortmund. A Chapter 3 is entirely possible, especially when Dortmund are negotiating the sale of young player Jamie Kitten to Chelsea and will need a more experienced face in attack. Next is Newcastle United. After being rejected by Brian Mbeumo in favor of a move to Manchester United, the Magpies are forced to find an alternative for the right winger or second striker position. Sancho, if willing to take a pay cut, is completely suitable in terms of style and commercial potential. A little further away, Bayern Munich could also show interest. The German Giants are lacking a classy number 10 after losing Florian Wirtz to Liverpool. Sancho was once a top Bundesliga star, once making the whole of Germany bow, so Bayern's interest is not unrealistic. The question is whether they will have the confidence to invest in a player who has just failed twice in the Premier League. And finally, one name that has emerged not just for Sancho but for many other stars: Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi club have failed to land Bruno Fernandes and Mohamed Salah, but Sancho could be a more affordable and image-conscious target. In the Middle East, his $300,000 a week wages are certainly not a barrier. For Sancho, this could be a chance to rebuild his career in a less pressurized environment, even if it means giving up the top European leagues. But my friends, no matter which option, there is one common thread that runs through all of them: Jadon Sancho will have to choose between fame and reality. If he insists on staying on the same salary he is receiving at Manchester United, he will continue to be inventory at a club that does not need him. But if he accepts the change, cuts his income, and is willing to play for the belief rather than for a $1 million contract, a promising new chapter can open up for his career. Perhaps the cruelest thing in Jadon Sancho's journey is not the rude rejection, but the feeling of being needed then suddenly no longer suitable. He did not decline to the point of disaster, nor did he cause too much scandal, but suddenly went downhill quietly as each door closed in an inglorious way and he was no longer chosen. Sancho is not lacking in talent, we all know that, but in an increasingly harsh football environment with financial data and pragmatism, the young English star is being pushed aside by the very things that made him special. There are risks ahead in every choice, but if he still has a real desire, what Sancho needs right now is not a big team, but a small start quiet enough for him to listen to himself again, because only when he stops living in the shadow of million-pound contracts and huge expectations can Sancho truly return to being the player people once loved for the way he plays for his enchanting style. So what do you think about Jadon Sancho's story? In your opinion, which path should he choose to save his career? Should he sacrifice his high salary to find a new destination, or stay at Old Trafford and wait for a miracle? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the FB podcast channel so you don't miss out on future in-depth football analysis. Thank you for listening and see you next time.